in coming to Chicago, I felt no pressure, none at all. I was prepared for anything that would happen. I know the Bulls wanted to win. I wanted to win desperately. So really, for me, after being in New York, being in Chicago was a piece of cake.
Then you are in Australia right now.
You're talking NBA basketball. You're talking great teams. You're talking great individual players.
Takes it off, and there's number 23, and of course Johnny goes nuts.
So we're all getting goosebumps thinking about it now.
I just tried to go out there and play my game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Adam. I don't like anybody. I'm not a people person.
Strand, you made the pass, yes. Christian, can you catch the ball? Yes.
All the stars were aligned and all the muscles fired at the right time, and I was able to get off the ground and throw one down.
I was saving that as a surprise for you.
And now, introducing your host for In All Airness, Adam Ryan.
Welcome to episode 43. Thanks for joining me. My website, inallairness.com. Just add a / and the episode number to view show notes. In this episode, it's my pleasure to welcome 5-time NBA champion, 3 as a player, 2 as a coach, and Chicago Bulls great Bill Cartwright. Now, Bill Cartwright was the Bulls' starting center in the first NBA game that I ever recorded on VHS tape. I'm talking about round 1 of the 1989 NBA playoffs, game 5 at Cleveland, obviously known as The Shot by MJ. Incredibly, as I record this, it's 25 years this year since that game in question. I'm thrilled that Bill joined me to chat about his great basketball career. I'm confident that you'll enjoy the conversation and you'll learn plenty more about Mr. Bill. Stay tuned for some more great listener feedback towards the end of this conversation. Now, onto the show. My guest today was a first-team All-American in 1979 at the University of San Francisco. He was the 3rd pick in the 1979 NBA draft, was an All-Star in his rookie season, and he is a 5-time NBA champion of the Chicago Bulls as a player and coach. Bill Cartwright, thanks for joining me.
Adam, I'm very pleased to be here. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing very well, and thanks again for making time to chat with me today. Now, you played your high school basketball at a place called Elk Grove in California. Now, I'm only going off what Google is saying in terms of the directions, but I'm pretty sure it's just south of Sacramento. So I read that in one of your high school games, you had a staggering 66 points, so obviously a bit of a scoring machine. However, I believe that your first sporting love may have actually been baseball. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's really accurate. You know, when I grew up, I was a sports kid. Yes, I did go to high school in Elk Grove, California. And Elk Grove is south of Sacramento, and we lived even further out, maybe 20 miles further out than that. So I really grew up in the country, really a country kid. I kind of enjoyed my upbringing out there, and went to school at Elk Grove and played a variety of sports. But yeah, I did love, in particular, baseball, and I always hoped I'd be a baseball player.
Right. So at what age then did you become more along the line of wanting to take up basketball? I guess once your height started really to shine through, I guess that was probably an indication. But when did you make the switch to playing basketball primarily?
Probably more my sophomore year in high school. I found out a couple of things. I found out that even though I was a good baseball player, I actually played against a couple of guys who were really good and basically hit the ball further than I could ever imagine hitting it in my life. And then I kind of thought, maybe I should be focusing on basketball a little bit. And also, we had a really good basketball program in our high school. We had a good coach who was motivated to have the gym open all the time. And I actually had another taller guy who was as tall as me to play against all the time as well. So it was a really good environment for me, and I was really very fortunate.
Excellent. Now, I think your career averages in high school, you were something around 40 points a game and then over 20 rebounds per game as well. So you're very dominant, to say the least. You were a 4-year player then at the University of San Francisco, and in your final 3 college seasons, your Dons went 74-15, and you had 2 trips to the Sweet 16 in your last 2 seasons. To this day, you're still the all-time leading scorer, ahead of Hall of Fame legend Bill Russell. So that's an incredible achievement in itself. Looking back on that college career, Bill, what do you consider are your greatest memories or achievements from that period of time?
Well, I was really very, very fortunate that I went to, not the biggest university, but I think the one that probably fit me best. USF is right dead center of San Francisco. It's right next to Golden Gate Park, and it is truly a part of San Francisco. It's a very diverse school. I was very fortunate to be able to go there and play with really good teammates who were also motivated to win. My sophomore year was probably our best season, where we actually were number one team in the country for most of the year. And that was really exciting to be number one and have that kind of recognition. I love the whole USF experience. I can't say enough about it. It was one of the best times of my life to be in that type of environment. And, you got your friends around, you're young, the games were exciting, and my great teammates and coaches. It was just a great experience.
Yeah, you've got some great memories there. I stumbled upon some great photos of you as well when I was doing some research for the chat, and one of them, you did mention the Golden Gate Park, I think it was, and obviously in San Francisco, and there's a backdrop of a photo of you at USF with a couple of other players and your coach, I'm assuming, and you've got the Golden Gate Bridge in the background, which is a fantastic photo too.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I had my head coach for the 3 of the 4 years was Bob Gaylord, who was a great coach for us, and then after that it was Dan Baloney, who was also a very, very good coach. So I was very fortunate to have those two guys.
You were an All-American in numerous seasons, but you were first-team All-American in 1979 alongside Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Do you recall ever playing against them in any way prior to the NBA, or did you first meet in the pros?
No, I actually met both those guys at an all-star game in college. We weren't even playing. We just happened to be part of the all-star team and had an opportunity to meet them there. So they're both quite big-time characters in their own right and in their own way.
Yeah. You left USF with averages of over 19 points a game and 10 rebounds a game as well. The New York Knicks picked you at number 3 in the 1979 NBA draft. Now, there's minimal, if any, TV footage that I've been able to come across in the research for this chat, but I did see a great photo of you with your then agent, Bob Wolf, in Boston a few days before the draft. You're holding like a large tape deck, like a stereo deck. Have you seen that photo since, and what do you actually remember about draft day itself, Bill?
Well, as far as the radio, those were the days you used to carry around your big boom boxes, but Bob Wolf was, my agent at that time, and I was really lucky in being able to find him. He was also Larry Bird's agent as well, and no finer person existed than this guy. He was a great agent. He was a great person. I was really very fortunate to meet him. Just a nice man, and obviously I was excited to be able to go to the Knicks to play basketball and have that experience. It was, the furthest point where I can go. I mean, I was in San Francisco, and then now, boom, all of a sudden I'm in New York getting ready to play for the Knicks. So it was a really exciting time.
Yeah, understandably. Now, your rookie season is, in my opinion, and I'm sure in many others, it's historically underrated. You played all 82 games. You were an all-star in that first year, and you averaged almost 22 points, just under 9 rebounds. You had 2 assists and more than 1 block a game, and you were all rookie first team as well. So alongside, again, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Can you just talk a little bit about that great rookie season and your transition into the NBA?
Well, I really felt like I was ready to go to the NBA. I played 4 years of college basketball and had a lot of fun at school, and I felt I was really ready to make the transition physically and mentally. And I was really fortunate in the sense that the starting center of the team was Marvin Webster, and Marvin had gotten sick that year and was unable to play, so I was really the only center that they had. So I think that year I was second in the league in minutes. I got a chance to play a lot, and unfortunately I was able to put down a foundation for myself that year.
How was the Madison Square Garden crowd? Because obviously we know that historically the Knicks fans love their basketball and they appreciate good basketball, but they've gone through a few trials and tribulations just trying to come up with a finals winning team. So how did you find that crowd playing in front of them as a young sort of 22, 23-year-old?
Well, the crowds were very good. They were excited. We had a young team coming in. That year, it was really a year of just learning everything, learning how to play in the NBA. My first coach was Red Holtzman. Earl Monroe was one of my teammates. I had a chance to play with a young Ray Williams and a young Michael Ray Richardson. I think our starting forward was Toby Knight, who played at Notre Dame. Our starting forward was this guy, Larry Demick, who came in with me. He was from Arizona State. And we just had a bunch of young guys. Hollis Copeland was from Rutgers. Jeff Houston, New York kid, was from Texas Tech. Sly Williams from Rhode Island. Glenn Gondazak was from ULV. We just had a bunch of young guys who were just very, very eager to play and trying to prove ourselves.
Yeah, that's half the battle sometimes. You want guys who want to be there, and yeah, that's exactly what happened. Now, you remained relatively injury-free early on in the NBA career, but you suffered from some terrible foot-related problems in the mid-1980s. You missed the entire 85 season and I think all but 2 games in 1986. At the same time, unfortunately, Bernard King also missed the 1986 season after his terrible knee injury late the season before. You then had Hubie Brown as your head coach. So you had 2 incredible coaches straight off the bat in the NBA, and the Knicks had selected Patrick Ewing in the 85 NBA draft. So can you just maybe talk a little bit about that mid-80s period and the transition that was sort of taking place with the franchise and how you adapted being off the court?
Well, at that point in time, I played 2 years. So I played in like 164 straight games. And then what happened is that during the summertime, I was working out, and I actually stepped on a rock when I was running, and, my foot was a little sore, but instead of taking some time off, I just continued to work out and run on it. And from that rock bruise, developed a stress fracture. I gave it some time to heal. I went in, they diagnosed a stress fracture, you can't play. So then I was off for a year. I came back, and the doc cleared me to play on it. The foot wasn't ready, so I played on it, and it broke. So basically, I missed almost 2 years of basketball because of a rock. So, and it was an interesting time because I was still young. I was hungry. I wanted to play, and after Red Holtzman left, we got Hubie Brown, who I liked as a coach, very demanding coach, and then we ended up getting Patrick on the team, him, and guys like Kenny Walker and Mark Jackson. So we had a good young nucleus of players. After that, Hubie was let go, and then we got Bob Hill, who was one of the assistant coaches. He took over as coach. And then after that, we got Rick Pitino, who's now in Louisville. So I had a variety of coaches when I was in New York, and seemingly we were going through some kind of transition every year to try to find ourselves so we could be able to compete in the East. But in the meantime, what was interesting about joining the league at that point in time was just to be able to see all the guys that you had seen on TV. Like my first game, I played against Darryl Dawkins and the Philadelphia 76ers, which at that time had Dr. J on it. I played against, just centers who were great in the league. Bob Lanier was still playing, Artis Gilmore, Dave Cowens. I played against Cream, played against Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes. So there was a lot of really great big guys still in the league that I had an opportunity to play against. So it was fun. It was fun. And then once Patrick came there and joined me, my playing time went down. The team was seemingly getting younger. And then, of course, that was right before I got traded to Chicago.
Yeah, well, you mentioned some great names there that you were playing against and with early on in your career. And in 1988, as you said, you had Rick Pitino as your head coach, and you were coming off the bench behind, obviously, one of the greatest centres ever in Patrick Ewing, or who would be. And plus there was a possible trade talk in the wind as well. So do you mind just talking a little bit about that last season in New York, and how early were you actually hearing your name in some trade rumours at all, Bill?
Well, the interesting thing is that you always heard your name in trade rumors. And every year, whether one reason or another. So that's something I never really worried about. If I'm going to get traded, I'm going to get traded. I really enjoyed, playing in New York. My family was there. I actually lived in Manhattan for 2 years before, my son was born. And then we ended up moving out to Jersey just to, be able to raise a kid out there. So it was a great time, but it was a time of a lot of transition because seemingly we had not every third year, maybe every other year, we had a new GM or we had a new coach. So we were constantly in transition.
Yeah, that's true. There was a fair bit of chopping and changing of the personnel and obviously the front office and whatnot as well. So it makes it difficult, particularly in such a big franchise that the fans and the city expect a lot out of as well. So the Knicks sent you to the Bulls after the 1988 season. It was pretty much effectively in exchange for Charles Oakley. I think there's some draft picks involved as well. One of them would turn out to be Will Perdue. So how was your reception in Chicago when you first got there, and did you feel the pressure of what was the weight of expectation given the fact that they sent Charles Oakley to New York in exchange for you primarily?
Well, as we were talking about, being worried about trades, I wasn't. When the trade happened, I was actually in Hawaii. So, as a matter of fact, I had just landed in Hawaii, and I walked into my hotel room, and then I got a phone call from the Bulls GM, Jerry Krause, asking me to come to Chicago. So I told him I just flew to Hawaii from New York. So he told me I've got to come to Chicago. So I got on the next flight I could and flew to Chicago for the trade. And after you played in New York, and I played there for 9 years, you've really gone through and been tested for everything. Because New York's going to test your character, and you'll find out who you really are. So in coming to Chicago, I felt no pressure. None at all. I was prepared for anything that would happen. I know the Bulls wanted to win. I wanted to win desperately. So really, for me, after being in New York, being in Chicago was a piece of cake.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear, and it's also interesting that you were obviously on a off-season trip and then taking a bit of a holiday to then find out that you were going to be soon on a plane back to your new city of Chicago. So thank you for sharing that as well. Now, in the 1989 season, probably near the height of the Bulls and Pistons rivalry, Chicago hosted the Pistons in a game that will be probably more remembered for a fight that broke out between yourself and Isaiah Thomas. Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about that incident and your take on the very heated Bulls versus Pistons rivalry of that era in general?
Well, I think the big thing about that is that we were competitors, where Detroit had knocked us out of the playoffs for 2 straight years in quest of their 2 championships. So our games were very spirited, basically, because people ask me about it all the time. I mean, there really wasn't a fight. It was more of Isaiah hitting me and more of him running than a fight. So there was no real fight. It was just more something that happened, an altercation, and then it's over, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, no, altercation is obviously the better word, I guess, in retrospect. But obviously there were numerous games, even regular season games, where emotions certainly flared, and that was obviously one of those such occasions. Now, early in the 1991 NBA season, Phil Jackson, another fantastic coach that you were lucky enough to play for, Phil Jackson named you co-captain of the Bulls. How do you actually remember learning the news, and what impact do you think that had on the unity of the team during that 1991 season, the first championship?
Well, I think that Phil was looking just to stabilize the team. So it was actually myself, Michael, and Scotty. We were the team captains. So it was good. It was kind of an old guy, a guy who was kind of in the middle, and a young guy. So it kind of encompassed everybody.
In Sam Smith's book, The Jordan Rules, one of the chapters details Jordan's supposed request to your fellow teammates to not pass the ball to you late in close games. What did you actually make of the Jordan Rules book at the time it was released? And are you willing to discuss how your relationship with Jordan developed the longer that you were teammates?
Well, Michael and I, our relationship is fine. It's absolutely fine. I mean, we both respect each other. I'm older than Michael. So I think that the thing is that, whatever Sam wrote in his book, and I know Sam very well also, Sam Smith, he's a really good guy. So whatever he wrote, I don't know if it's true or not, but it didn't make for a nice read. But the reality is that, I always got the ball plenty of times. So I can't speak to that, but I can say that, my relationship with Michael as well as all of my other teammates is pretty good.
That's great to hear. And just speaking of your actual on-court play, you have a very unique shooting style. Is that something that you sort of was self-taught when you first were growing up, or how did you actually develop that unique release of the ball, which is obviously very hard to block too, given your height as well?
Well, I think it's something that just happens. I don't know if, I don't think I was trying to do that. I think it's just something that happens. It felt fine with me, and it was going in, so I just didn't think about it. I just did it.
As a player, you won 3 NBA championships, obviously the first Bulls three-peat of 91, 92 and 93, which is a remarkable feat. Can you just discuss the impact of that three-peat on yourself and the dedication and the hard work that goes into an incredible run like that?
Well, I think all of it is, every year is definitely different. The first year, we were able to overcome our adversary, Detroit Pistons, and finally beat them. And then our opponent for the championship was going to be the Lakers, who really, frankly, I don't believe anybody thought we were going to beat them, especially after we lost the first game in Chicago. But I believe through our will, and I think that we and the coaching staff, Phil Jackson and his coaching staff, made some really great decisions defensively that allowed us to take the ball out of Magic Johnson's hands in the backcourt and basically take the momentum out of their offense, and it really hurt them throughout the rest of that series, and we were able to actually sweep them in L.A. and win our first championship. The second championship against Portland was equally as tough because they were a really athletic team featuring Clyde Drexler. They were a high-powered offensive team. They were big. So we really had our work cut out for us. But I think what really helped us, especially get over the hump, was our bench in that series. Portland actually had us down by 15 points in Game 6, and our bench came in and brought us all the way back in the fourth quarter, featuring Bobby Hidson making 2 big threes that allowed us to come back and win that game and the series in Chicago. And Phoenix, I think that we were just, it was the versatility of our team, because they had not a real young Charles Barkley, but they had a Charles Barkley, we guarded him in his prime, and they had Kevin Johnson as well. So they had really good players, and they were able to play big, small, fast. So our team, we were able to adjust to their style of play and match them. And ultimately, we were able to beat them in Phoenix on John Paxson's 3. So that was a great series. So ultimately, all 3 of those first championships were all different, but it did rely on the one of 2 things: either our smarts, player smarts, or coaches' smarts, or our our bench, our team, to be as versatile as it is, to be able to play fast, slow, and then what we didn't get noted for was that we could really guard. We were a good defensive team. We could really guard.
Yeah, definitely were. It seems that each season presented a different challenge, and to be able to get over the top in each of those 3 championship seasons is really nothing short of remarkable as well. And interestingly, in 1993, Paul Westphal was the head coach of the Phoenix Suns. Now, he was a one-time teammate of yours in New York. Did you have much to do with Paul Westphal in your playing days, and how was the relationship when you were going against him as the starting center on the team that he was trying to defeat as head coach of the Phoenix Suns?
Well, Paul is, if anybody knows Paul, they know he's a phenomenal guy. He's got a great family. He's a really good guy to talk to. He's coached NBA in college. So I've always enjoyed the time that I've spent with him.
Yeah, he seemed to be certainly a great guy from the outside looking in, and seemed to be quite laid back given the high-natured stakes of the NBA Finals in particular during that 1993 season. Now, in the off-season of 1993, most people would obviously know that Michael Jordan retired from the NBA. That led Scottie Pippen to be the leader of the Bulls, the on-court leader. He was obviously incredible in that 94 season. And you had a lot of new players that were added to the roster, including, of course, Tony Kukoc. You got Bill Wennington, Australia's own Luke Longley, Steve Kerr, Corey Blunt, Pete Myers. All those sort of guys were added to the roster. You took the New York Knicks, your former team, to the second round. It was a 7-game series and had some very notable games in amongst that as well. After having a great regular season as well, you only won 2 games less than you did the previous season. So can you just talk a little bit about the 94 season and how the team came together to achieve such a great result, given the fact that arguably the greatest of all time had left the NBA?
Well, I think that just shows you the versatility of our team. We were very versatile. We had a lot of guys that everybody had trust in, and we were just able to really have it depend on one another for that season to come out and just play good, solid basketball. Like I said, we could always guard. So even without Michael, we had a formidable team. And we were really one shot away from going back to play for an NBA title.
I think you're referring to Game 5, the foul on Scottie Pippen, is that right?
Yeah, that was really tough. But, we give the Knicks credit. They still played well. But we felt that, given a couple of breaks, we could have been right back there.
Yeah, I remember watching on TV here in Australia. We'd only get the news update of a night as to what's happened in the American sports. And when I saw the result of Game 7, this is obviously pretty much pre-internet, so I had to rely on the TV to let me know. I was shattered when I saw that you guys had lost Game 7 because I was such a die-hard fan even here in Australia, and it was very disappointing. So I can't imagine when you went back to the locker rooms after losing that 7th game, how was the feeling in general? Because you were so close to perhaps getting into the Eastern Conference Finals, and from there, who knows what might have happened.
Well, nobody likes to lose, that's for sure. So for me, it's always, just disappointing. I don't try to justify it as saying that, well, you gave your best effort and that's good enough, because the bottom line is that you still want to win. So to me, you just leave it there, you leave it alone, and just kind of just go on and continue to play. But when you lose a game, you lose a series, you just walk away from it and what it is, and hopefully just never let it happen again.
That's a good way to look at it. Now, in the 95 season, you played for George Karl and the Seattle Supersonics. You had really an eclectic array of coaches in your NBA career. As you said, you had Red Holzman, Hubie Brown, Rick Pitino, Bob Hill briefly as well, Doug Collins, Phil Jackson. How did the coaching philosophies of these guys impact your future coaching, which we'll get to in just a moment?
Well, I think the big thing is that with all those guys, everybody has their own philosophy of the club. And you just learn a lot of lessons about people, about systems, what's going to work offensively, defensively. And then how does it all tie together to make one system? So it's very interesting. So you just try to learn. You just try to learn from all those different guys and take what you like from each and every one of them.
Now, Rod Thorne, who was the then NBA Director of Operations, he was once quoted as saying, in relation to yourself, he's a little unorthodox with the way he moves around with his arms. However, during your NBA career, you were also on the receiving end of a few severe elbows too. Do you mind just perhaps elaborating on that a little bit, please, Bill?
Well, probably like most big guys, I'm going to have my share of collisions. And, we all know that, I got some recognition for maybe hitting people with my elbows. But I think it's all how you look at it. It was part of the game. I never really focused on it, or good or bad. If it happened, it happened. If it didn't, it didn't. So it wasn't something I was trying to do. It was just something that kind of happened.
Yep. Now, a listener of the show, Roy Ward, has asked an interesting question that I'd like to pose to you, if you don't mind. What was it like to watch Michael Jordan's fame skyrocket, and how did Jordan subsequently deal with it? What's your take on that?
Well, Michael had always, ever since he came out of college, gotten a certain amount of notoriety. So he was the second pick in the draft behind Sam Bowie, and I'm sure Portland is still thinking about that. And then as soon as he came to Chicago, he was able to show his ability to score and have flashes of unbelievable athleticism. So naturally, I think that everybody knew he was a great player, but what defines a great basketball player is being able to win. And I was lucky enough that, to be able to arrive in Chicago in '88, along with, others like the Bulls picked up John Paxson, who was playing for, I think, San Antonio, guys like Cliff Livingston. We were able to draft our bench with Will Perdue, Stacey King, Scott Williams, and B.J. Armstrong. So with that team put together, and then now having a couple of years to develop, that's why we know of Michael Jordan as being one of the great players of all time, because he was able to not only play great, but play and win 6 championships.
Well said. Now, one of your numerous NBA nicknames was Teach, and post-retirement for 5 seasons you were the Bulls' assistant coach to Phil Jackson and then Tim Floyd. You were named the interim head coach of the Bulls, and then in 2003 you were the head coach and took the team to plus 13 in the wins column from 2002. How do you look back on your coaching career in Chicago, Bill?
I enjoyed it. It was during a transitional period for the Bulls. We had a young Jamal Crawford, we had a young Eddie Curry, we had a young Tyson Chandler, we had a young Jay Williams who ended up getting hurt in a motorcycle accident. So the nucleus of our team was really young, and it was a building period. So, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed some of the things we were able to accomplish that year. I learned a lot, and it's something that I look back on with a lot of happy thoughts. So I was really appreciative of the opportunity.
I'm pleased to hear that. Now, following your time in Chicago, you worked with New Jersey Nets and the Phoenix Suns, and then also most recently in 2013 you went overseas and took on a pretty big challenge in the Japanese professional league there in Osaka. Do you mind just talking a little bit about that move to Japan and maybe some of your more memorable coaching moments in general?
Well, what that really allowed me to do going over to Japan, and let's go back, because I enjoyed my time in New Jersey and my relationship with the players there, as well as, the same in Phoenix. Naturally, I was a lot warmer in Phoenix, but I enjoyed my time there, and, being able to coach and the relationships I had with the players and coaches was really good. And when this opportunity came up in Japan, where I would go over there and take over a team that was really struggling, I thought, here's a chance to go over and see a part of the country that I've always wanted to see, and it's a chance to coach a little bit. I'd have to be over there for about 6 months. That's it. So I went over and just kind of threw myself into that experience, and and it was great. All the lessons that I had learned from coaching came back to me, and we were able to turn the team and win 10 in a row and give the guys some confidence and some hope and spirit, and go through that process along with learning a little bit about Japan. And I was in Osaka, which is a great city, a lot of fun. So all in all, it was tremendous. It was tremendous. The only bad part and reason why I did not go back is because it's just too far from home. I still have my family here in Chicago, and I still wanted to spend some time with them and be close to them, so I decided to come back.
Yep, completely understandable too, being that far away. I guess just briefly, the language barrier would have presented a few problems as well initially when you arrived in Japan?
No, not really, because I had 2 interpreters, and really a lot of the younger people speak English, and so I got around really well. The only thing you have to know in Japan is the train system. You probably know more about that than me, but once you've kind of mastered the train, you're really good to go. So it was great. Once I kind of figured it out and where I was going, I was okay.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to hear. Now, 2 names I'd just like to mention to you, John Paxson and Steve Kerr, both are former Bulls teammates of yours. Paxson was, and still is as we record this, the Vice President of Basketball Operations when you were the Chicago head coach, and Steve Kerr, who was the then Suns General Manager, hired you to work in Phoenix. How did you approach your professional roles with those guys, given that you have such long-standing ties as teammates and friends?
Well, I think both of those guys know me pretty well, so I'm a pretty responsible guy. I'm going to come to work every day. We're going to work our ass off and do all the things necessary there to do to win basketball games. Both those guys were hard-working players and would do whatever it took to win. So I think all 3 of us were very similar that way. So the relationship that we had was very good.
That's great to hear as well. Do you mind if I just ask, what's your current status in relation to your coaching ambitions, Bill? Do you hope to get an opportunity to work within the NBA again?
Well, yeah, I do. This is really the first year I've been off from the NBA in about 30 years. I'd like to get back to coaching. Right now we have a background investigation company in Chicago. It's called Cartwright Downs, and we do background investigations for pre-hire. So it's kind of interesting. It's something really different. So I think we're going to do this for a little bit until I can get back to coaching.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm glad that you're still obviously looking keenly at the NBA and hoping to get back in there soon when the opportunity presents itself, so that's good. Now, as we speak, you're currently running also a big man and a guard class held at Chicago's Joy of the Game. Do you mind just talking a little bit about that and your involvement with coaching some of the youngsters in the Chicago area?
Well, I've always done camps during the summer for the kids, and this just gives me a little time to do some stuff with the kids now. I do it twice a week, and then during the summer I'm open to put a camp together and have a basketball camp. So it just gives me an opportunity to just continue to do what I've done during the summer. Work with the kids, give them some basic fundamental skills, give them an understanding of how to play, how to compete, and then hopefully somewhere in there give them an opportunity to have some fun.
Yeah, that's very important as well. And it's obviously great that they have the chance to learn from someone with such great experience and obviously who's achieved so much in the game of basketball. So I just want to thank you, Bill. It's been a real thrill having the chance to chat with you. The first NBA game I ever watched here in Australia was in 1989. It was the shot, MJ over Cleveland, and that was the first game I ever saw, and you were the starting centre. So it means a lot that I've had a chance to chat with you some 25 years later. I never thought that'd be ever an option. So again, thank you very much for your time chatting. You briefly did mention Cartwright Downs, your company there. Is there any other way that listeners of the show can keep in touch with what you're up to these days online?
Well, believe it or not, I am on LinkedIn. So if you're curious at all, LinkedIn me. Our site is cartwrightdowns.com. It's Cartwright, DOWNES.com. I think those are probably the two best ways of doing it.
Well, I'll put links in the show notes to this episode. I'll put some links to your business website there and also for your LinkedIn information for people that would like to perhaps connect with you in some way. But again, Bill, just thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed chatting about your career and thanks for opening up so much. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Hopefully one day I'll get a chance to come out and visit you guys out there, especially at this time of the year. It's about 8 degrees outside right now.
Yeah, right. So it's pretty fresh there. So it's still the tail end of summer here. But just maybe one more quick question, if you don't mind. Just speaking of Australia, obviously you've got links there to one of our own, Luke Longley, and of course he was part of the Bulls team in the last few years that you were in Chicago. Do you mind just talking about the relationship that you have with Luke? I know he occasionally visits back to Chicago, but not all that often.
Yeah, I haven't seen Luke in a while, but Luke, if you don't know him, is a phenomenal guy. I really enjoyed when he was out here. He's such a great guy and really good basketball player. Big, strong, fast, smart. He was a real addition to our team. And, I know he makes his home out there. Tell him to invite me out sometime.
He was obviously a key part of the Bulls roster in the second three-peat, and I guess you were, as an assistant coach in 97 and 98 even, you were probably working a lot with the big guys particularly. How was the experience of sort of teaching him some of the tricks of the trade from your long and storied career?
Well, I think you got to use the skills that God gave you, and my biggest thing with Luke, because he was already a skilled player, was just trying to make him more aware of the opponent and what their skill set was, so that we could figure out a game plan to maybe how he was going to attack them or how he was going to guard them. But like I said, Luke did a great job for us. Luckily, he's a smart player, so he kind of already knew how to play. Mm-hmm. So he did just a wonderful job for us.
Now, yeah, again, Bill, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best in whatever you do, and we hope to see you again coaching soon at the highest level.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on, and good luck. Thanks. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks again, Bill. That was another highlight of my podcast journey to date. I encourage you to interact with the show. Suggest topics for future episodes or guests that you'd like to hear conversations with. I also welcome voicemail comments or questions on my website or via my Facebook page. Since last episode, more great feedback has been received. Thank you to Harrison Highland for adding the first review and rating via Stitcher, 5 stars no less. Harrison says, for anyone who loves 80s and 90s NBA, this is a thoughtful, sincere, humorous and Australian tribute to the game and the era of MJ. Thank you, Harrison. Obviously, your sense of humour is very finely tuned. You're a great supporter of the show also and had previously left feedback via the iTunes store, so I really do appreciate you going the extra mile just to leave feedback for me on Stitcher. Speaking of iTunes, worldwide the show currently has 29 reviews and 33 5-star ratings. Thank you for your great support of my podcast. If you add a review on iTunes or Stitcher, I'd love to mention your name in a future episode of the show. Your ratings and reviews are like a nifty BJ Armstrong pass off a shot fake, no less. The ultimate assist, helping me reach a wider podcast audience, and that in turn gives you, the listener, more opportunity to hear conversations with great guests. You can subscribe to my show in various ways, inallairness.com/iTunes. Alternatively, add it to your Stitcher playlist, inallairness.com/Stitcher. For those in the know, my RSS feed appears in the right-hand sidebar of my website. You can also subscribe to the show on Player FM and other podcatchers. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.